Cool, thank you.
All right, I'm JP Rindfleisch, and I'm here with Emma Jane Heaton for a dialogue doctor session. Emma Jane, tell me a little bit of who you are and where you are in your writing journey.
Hello. So I've written 4 books. I've not published any yet. I've got one that I was on a previous podcast episode with Jeff about that I'm aiming for a traditional publisher. I don't know how long that resolve will last, though. I might end up self-publishing it. And the series that I'm working on at the moment is a sci-fi series. So I finished book 1. I'm just running it through Pro Writing Aid, which takes a lot longer than I thought it would.
It
And
does.
then yeah, I'm kind of getting it ready to send to a editor, and also plotting out book 2, which I
Yeah,
would like help with, please.
excellent. So, uh, like you said, we're going to look at book 2. What are you hoping to walk away with today?
I guess I guess like an outline of sorts. I did when I before I started book 1, I outlined the whole 3 books, but then so much changed in book 1.
Yeah.
Having to completely rethink it. So that just some help figuring that out would be great.
Okay. Okay. Um, so I think I've got an idea, and I think you sent me some documents and we'll go over them, kind of my thoughts, and we can hopefully get you an outline for book 2.
Cool. Thank
So
you.
I'm gonna share my screen and we'll just dive in. How's that sound?
Mhm. Lovely.
Okay. So the document you sent, I'm probably going to jump around a little bit in just because
Mhm.
it depends on like what's the information that I kind of want to dive into. And I think the first thing is coming to like a solid what's the overall quote unquote theme or story hypothesis of book 1, because I think that will help drive what book 2 and book 3 kind of look like. So as a first hit, we have these 3 POV characters. Um, and I just sort of picked up a couple of needs based off of the conversation or the little descriptions here, where Kai feels abandoned. To me, that suggests like the need for affection has been hindered or harmed in some way or another. So I think that might play a role at some point, which I know you talk later on about her potentially meeting her mother. I think that would be a really good tie-in. And then learn that connection is better than isolation. Um, so I'm not going to assume that you know much about Max Neef and the 9 fundamental human needs, because this is just me and my bubble. But participation is basically community. It's this need is how you interact with others, and when it's hindered, you're often isolated, alone. You don't feel like you're connected to anyone. So participation can be as extreme as Katniss working with the other districts to tear down Panem because she's participating in something and rising up against in order to protect others. Or it could be as simple as just taking part in a community and in any form, either political or just participating. And then when you don't do that, you have no community around you. So I feel like the way that you had mentioned that she's learning that connection is better than isolation is basically learning to participate and be among other people and have a community of some sorts. Would you say these 2 needs seem to be on the higher scale for Kai?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's kind of her whole thing. So she's um because of like her past, like sort of being let down, abandoned, she in book
Hmm.
1 she kind of continued to resist and like push away this community, and like in the end kind of gave in and like was a part of it. But now like in book 2 she has to deal with the consequences of um of learning that lesson a bit too late, I guess. And
Yeah.
I guess she's still learning it. Like it's not a
Yeah.
complete change sort of thing.
Yeah. And definitely when I think about like even the hypothesis need, when you find your quote unquote true need of whatever story you're telling, there's always room for growth. There's always room where that need may develop or change more. Or in book 2, there might be a totally different need that gets pulled on because the quote unquote theory or whatever you want to call it about the 9 fundamental human needs is that's like what defines a community of people that when it was originally created, it was by an economist who was just looking at like how can I gauge if countries are succeeding without money, because I don't want to put money into the conversation. I want to see like how are people thriving. And so obviously like these 9 needs would pull on um characters, but when we are telling stories, we want to sort of pick and choose, because as we do, we have these like resonations with our readers because we're like fulfilling certain needs or suppressing certain needs and getting that like all in the feels. Which when you have these 3 characters, I can definitely see differences among their needs. And I think any sort of fine tuning and focusing on that with book 1 and book 2 could help with the outline, especially. So when we move on to Emery, who is Kai's brother, who ends up with this like obsession with this virtual world and almost like doesn't want to leave it. This to me suggests maybe it's a need for understanding or subsistence in this form of like um almost like this hunger for something. And it doesn't necessarily need to be this physical hunger, like this need for food, but it's like this it's almost like an obsessive need as opposed to like a need for affection or something like that. So that's how I view subsistence, or even if it's just freedom. I wasn't really sure where you'd be interested in that direction for Emery, but I think for this one, just think about which one might be interesting.
Yeah, I guess so he was kind of almost the opposite to Kai in like how he viewed
Mhm.
the world they lived in. Um so he was like younger than her when they got there and things. And yeah, so I guess he always wanted like that community and family feel, and struggled to get it because Kai kind of wasn't giving it him.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I kind of thought of like him, he would then go into like these virtual worlds, to like find that community. So
Okay. Yeah, that
it's
makes
like
sense.
a step further because everything's changed now. Uh, the like world they lived in isn't what he thought it was. And yeah, so I guess it was just like I didn't really think about it too deeply, but I guess it was kind of like a extreme reaction to that. Like this is where he always found comfort.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's a reflection of Kai in the way of he's looking for his own community. So to me, that suggests participation as like a potential need to play with Emery. Um, and then your third character, Nico, does things for love. That's affection. Period. That's pretty straightforward. And then doubling down as a good soldier. This one suggests maybe either another participation or a protection need. So if it's participation, but like this false kind of way, it might mean that he's trying to stay in line, be with the fellow soldiers, kind of complies just to be just to fit in. Um, and this is like that false participation need where you are suppressing yourself in order to be a part of something bigger.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate, for
Okay,
Nico, definitely.
cool. Okay, so with all of that in mind, now I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of this document. um, and we're going to talk about the synopsis for book 1 because I just want to see where we are in this. And I came up with some potential hypotheses for how book 1 for each of these characters function. Um, and we can kind of see if anything changes a little bit. But with Kai, Kai initially wants freedom. evidenced by her desire to escape Earth using a homemade portal key. Doesn't want to be involved in the politics of the conflicts, just wants to be free from everything. The true need is understanding, often caught in web of conspiracy, betrayals, shifting loyalties, needing to understand this larger scheme of things. And the developing need is participation, becoming more involved with other people, seeing this larger issue at hand, can't remain that bystander, has to do something about it. Meaning that the hypothesis would be Kai's need for freedom leads to fulfill understanding by developing participation.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That's good.
And then in terms of like why I would do this and how I might approach like editing would be Kai would be seeking freedom up until this midpoint in the story. And in the midpoint of the story, she gets an opportunity to be free, but realizes that that's not a fulfilling opportunity, because at this point, that freedom doesn't give her understanding, and she has been participating so much that that freedom is no longer aligned with what her desires are. That's sort of how I would view using this and seeing like how to pull on each of those needs as the story progresses. So I don't know if that happens, but
Yeah, I think it sort of does. I think so she kind of, yeah, so the midpoint is she does change, like but she's still not all in.
mm-hmm.
She's kind of like, okay, well, I need to try it this other way, being part of this group, that this will get me what I want.
Yeah.
And then it's only in the finale that she's like, okay, now I really need to actually be with them like
Yeah.
properly and be all
Yeah.
in. That's
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think we're on the same page.
It's
Moving
interesting
to Emery.
because
Go
I
ahead.
think yeah, I'm gonna go through it again and just like check that I kind of have that change sort of right, like if it's like coming across well enough at the midpoint that like there is a bit of a change.
Yeah.
I'll go through and check.
Excellent. With Emery, I was thinking as I was reading through this that Emery's initial want is identity. Wants to earn a place as the UE operative, wants to define themselves and find a place within the UE structure. True need a protection, believes that protecting Kai by alerting the UE, and later when it discovers that deeper conspiracy, realizes there's more at stake. And then the developing need is understanding, as they develop that deeper understanding of the conspiracy accessing this virtual reality system, they seek to understand the true nature of events and alien technology, suggesting the hypothesis is Emery's need for identity leads him to fulfill protection by developing understanding. How I would view this is similar, where it's this initial want for who they are, earning this place, and then in the middle of the story, I got this and it wasn't what I wanted. What I really need is this protection, and I need to focus more on that.
Yeah. I find it so he kind of does the negative character
Mm-hmm.
arc as I describe it.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, so sorry, I kind of find it like in my head, I find it harder to figure out his path, but
And perhaps it's the
yeah,
negative side of protection. And that would be, you know what I mean? Like if his true need is protection, believing protecting Kai by alerting the others, it's almost like a misunderstood protection, or even a negative protection where it's a malicious protection.
yeah, I think that's definitely accurate. Yeah.
And
Uh,
so yeah. And I don't know, does that like resonate or sort of work with his character arc in book one?
yeah, no, it definitely does. I did kind of imagine him like for participation maybe being his initial want, but
Mm-hmm.
like you're also right, like he does also want identity. I think I was thinking of it within a community, so
Yeah.
it kind of kind of is both.
I think 100% I mean, we're writing characters as if they're real humans, and real humans would have all of these needs happening all at once. I think why I would pick one, either identity or participation, is because it could lead to different approaches. Especially in an antagonist, wanting identity could be very like selfish, of wanting to be earning a place as an operative, wanting to be like this awesome person, truly stand out individual. Wanting participation in a negative aspect could be wanting others to listen to his every call, to it's like the same thing but different, and it's almost like which version would interest you. And if it's participation, then by all means go with participation.
Yeah, I might have to think about it, because you're getting me thinking about it now. I guess so overall, the like 3 books that I want to do for this series initially, I wanted so Emery has this like negative arc in the first book, and then in the second I imagined him kind of, it even gets worse, it's still a negative arc. And then in the third book, it's the positive arc where he kind of comes back to himself. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about it. I think participation was like what I was thinking, but yeah, you're not wrong about the identity thing either.
And it's all interpretation, so you know what I mean. So I put a note here, and I'll send you this after this, so have a
Yeah.
think about that, and then yeah, that'll just be whichever direction you go with. We'll hop over to Nico, and I don't know if you can even see this, but it is bothering me. It's the Zoom thing. So with Nico, initial want is affection, evidenced by the relationship with Kai and complexities of being UE operative, while having feelings for someone on the opposite side. True need is freedom, finding themselves in a foreign land, trying to establish themselves and navigate the complexities. They need the freedom to choose their path, to not be bound by the dictates of the UE or any faction. And this developing need is participation, very similar to Kai in this case, where that developing need is participation, and actively establishing themselves as an ally and being part of this whole. So in this case, Nico's need for affection leads them to fulfill freedom by developing participation. I know that based off of how I've read it, like Nico has this like affectionate sort of thing that happens throughout the story, but I feel like that drive for affection is that initial want, and then it's almost like this realization, like, oh, I need to get out of here, even though they I don't know if they necessarily do in book 2, if I remember correctly.
So the end of book 1, that's kind of resolved, and Nico's back on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Nico's one is like the one I'm least sure about in the second book. Just because everything has changed. Yeah, sorry, I can't remember what I said. I think it
No,
was that so Nico, just let me get my notes. Yeah, so what I thought was like, because they really want to be this good soldier,
mm-hmm.
that they maybe start second book by doubling down on that. But yeah, what I would like is for them to kind of join Kai and Saskia, the other character.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know how to make that work.
I want, so in book 1, would you say that this true need still is freedom, but that Nico makes a bad choice at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's almost like they see this true need, and I think that means that this true need will resound again, because it's he's not ready to make the right choice yet,
Mm-hmm.
or it's something along those lines, which I mean you can play with totally, but I feel like that, yeah, okay. Okay. So I think we're on the same page with book one.
Mm-hmm.
So now moving on to some potentials for book two. Um I don't know how to begin this. So I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
So with Kai's arc for book two, based off of some of the ideas that you had, I was thinking that Kai's need for understanding leads her to seek identity. Because you had mentioned the connection with her mother, which I think is a great opportunity in book two. And then it developing protection of ensuring the safety of those that she cares about. Um, I I seem to like to view trilogies as like this middle book has the opportunity to learn um about like the broader world, about certain aspects of conspiracy and whatnot. It doesn't have to be this necessarily soggy middle, but it gives the opportunity to uncover some truths that were kind of set in place in book one, because book three, it you're gonna have the major revelation, sure, but you're also gonna have probably like some type of potential war or some type of like disastrous sort of situation. And so book two gives the space to uncover and really hone in on character growth. And I think that when you had mentioned Kai interacting with her mother, I felt like that would be a really good opportunity for book two, because we already know that she feels abandoned by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
I
then,
definitely her
oh, go
mum's
ahead.
it. I guess it was like where to bring her mum into it.
Yeah.
That was, but yeah, yeah,
I,
definitely.
I think it depends on what information does she have at the end of book one about her mother, or does she only have some information that's gonna like lead her down this rabbit trail that's gonna be like, oh, and there's my mother, hello.
Yeah, so what I was wondering, so I guess the good thing about the fact that I'm not going to publish any of these books till they're all written. I
Hmm.
can make changes to book one if it improves the
True,
story.
true.
Um, so so I wondered if because her mum was like one of the scientists who worked on the portals,
Yeah,
she went missing when like all the portals were shut off. Um, I wondered if like maybe that could be like they need to find these scientists because they
yeah,
know more. So that could kind of be the mission.
yeah.
Um,
I had a brain thought.
oh, go for
This
it.
happens a lot. Um, so I definitely feel like meeting the mother is in the back half of the book at some point. I
Mhm.
definitely think that this is a journey that Kai goes on where at least one time they go to a lead that there are potentially like, I don't know how dark you are, but dead scientists, or there is like something that suggests that maybe all the scientists are dead, and then a revelation that, oh, they're not. We have to go to this next place. But something that is like, hold on, my mother was a scientist, and having this like thread that weaves through. I think does Kai at the moment in book one, does Kai know that her mother was working on this?
Yeah, I guess she doesn't know. I guess she kind of, so Kai had this sort of rebellious phase as a teenager where she joined this
Hmm.
like group. And I think a lot of that was in response to the fact that her mum was a scientist for the government, um, and her kind of not agreeing with like the things the government doing. But there's
Yeah.
also this like not like, I guess, a lack of communication, maybe, not understanding that what her mum's I guess where her like mum's loyalties were.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, her mum wasn't actually a bad guy, sort of thing.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I guess, yeah, complicated relationship, mother and daughter relationship, which
yeah.
very,
And that sounds like, yes, she did know, but she misunderstood what her mother did. And like, you could go a thousand different directions. Some of these are a little tropey, but I mean, you could go in the direction of her mother was this bad person who was killed with all the rest of them in Kai's brain. But then she discovers that there was a rebellious group, and then as she starts to uncover these pieces, her mother was the leader of that rebellious group. Um, and those sorts of like uncovered pieces would be in book 2, as she starts to pull back these layers of like, hold on, uh one, there were scientists at this corporation that were actively going against whatever the original plan was, and two, as the story progresses, holy crap, my mom was part of this, holy crap, my mom was the leader of this, you know what I mean? Like, you could have those different revelations that happen in book 2. um
yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, I think I definitely imagine like the scientists that went missing is because they would be at risk. If they stayed on Earth, then yeah, they'd be, found out, or like they couldn't
yeah,
continue work doing, trying to sort the whole portal alien mess out.
yeah, yeah. And I think, I don't know if you have these in place or not, but I was curious, what was your overall thoughts of, would these scientists work with the aliens often? Is that maybe why they're dangerous or rebellious, is because they're actively working with them?
I didn't so I don't think that's where they were like when they went missing, but I think that like maybe they have some sort of relationship with them. Um yeah, when she finds her mum again. The extent of it though.
Yeah.
um because so there's like two alien races. There's the ones that the technology was taken from, the portal technology was taken from by
Mm-hmm.
humans,
Mm-hmm.
that we know about. And then there is also, but it wasn't originally made by them. So um I feel like the scientists are like, they're fully aware of like the aliens that the technology was taken from, and maybe it's a discovery that they're kind of working towards, that there's actually there's another group of aliens out there.
Yeah. I think I think you're hitting at what I was thinking about, which is a a revelation in book 2 of a potentially worse outcome, either being a potentially worse alien group, or like some sort of dissolution or destruction of the virtual world, of the physical world, or something that pulls into book 3. But it's this like extra bit of understanding or extra bit of revelation as to like what things are leading up to, because you have a note of, at the end of book 3, your thoughts are that the humans and the aliens will ultimately coincide together. Is that correct?
yeah. So yeah. So this like virtual world. So the technology on Earth with the virtual world is based off the technology that they got from these aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's going to be like linked. And yeah, so yeah, and yeah, so I guess I imagine that like you could then, by the end of book 3, like you could live on either in the real world or in this like virtual
Yeah.
world.
And
Um
there's some form of like peace or something like that, right?
yeah. But I feel like the middleman aliens I think I need to give them like some name or something. Man aliens for now. I think that because they were in conflict with humans, I think that, and
Yeah.
they weren't doing well anyway. So I think that there is going to be a point where they do come through the portals and launch like a counterattack to that initial
Yep.
attack that happened years ago. So maybe
Yep.
that's like a end of book two
Yep.
thing,
Yep.
launching to book three.
I would either say their appearance or the discovery of them coming is end of book two. And this is something that like Kai needs to actively be a part of, to either warn people about or to be present where it happens.
Yeah.
By the way, the end of your book three of at the very least two groups coming together and working together is participation.
Yep. Yeah.
So like your entire series comes to a conclusion of participation. So I'd really look at that as your big resonating beat. And I think that you show that in book one through the developmental stage of like Kai needs to develop this participation. I think that's something that will reign true throughout, even in this book too, where she's now has this like need for understanding and she needs to find herself. I think that this is a moment where Kai is basically realizing that she needs to be part of something bigger. And then in book two, she's realizing she needs to find who she is in order to become part of something bigger. So it's like, great, I've developed this participation. What am I supposed to do with it? Well, I need to develop myself, and then I can go back to continuing to expand and develop that participation. So that's why I think book two's focus on Kai's identity with her mother, especially. I think that is a really strong beat to focus on. Yeah, so I have some like potential notes as to like some off the wall ideas to think about for book two. Is it um discovering alien tech, hinting at her mother's portal, like do they find this and maybe that's where they like get leads to where her mother is it some archive on some remote moon, um and then finding some type of like alien-esque sanctuary, and then discovering that her mother's been a part of this, like trying to come together with the aliens or whatever it is. I really think that if you can do it, her mother working with the aliens is a perfect reflection of book three's participation. So I think that any opportunity that you could have with showing that humans and aliens are kind of coinciding near the end of this book is a reflection of the ultimate ending at the book three.
Okay, cool. Yeah, could definitely do that. So I imagine that the the mum and the other scientists had gone to maybe a moon that was orbiting the alien planet where the technology came from. Um, so yeah, they could definitely be working with the aliens. And then I guess like um, you know, as all cultures have, they will be like aliens who are kind of happy to work with these scientists, and then
Yeah.
there'll be others who
Oh
are just
yeah.
like, really angry and want
Yeah.
revenge.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I mean, you see that in the humans too. I mean, even the reflection of her mother being a rebellious scientist, they had scientists who were probably actively working against the alien and the technology. So I think you definitely see that. Um, which I mean, you could show that, does Kai interact negatively with aliens before meeting with her mother? And so she I'm just imagining a scene where she walks in and she sees one of these aliens and she's about to attack, and then a human stops her and tells her, no, 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 like, we're working together here. And it's this revelation of like, hold on a minute, like, we work with aliens? What are you guys doing? Sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I like that. I totally had imagined like her arriving on this like rocky moon and
Hmm.
discovering the science base. But yeah, if like she lands on this moon and there's an alien there, that's yeah, even better.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's talk about Nico for a moment. Um,
Mhm.
my thoughts on this book too would be need for freedom leads to seeking affection by reconnecting, and affection doesn't always mean like love as much as it means like familial love, family love, friendship, whatever. It doesn't always necessarily mean like partner love. um
Yeah.
so reconnecting and with Kai and finding that new family, by developing understanding, realizing the flaws, and the ultimately, I think Nico could use this book too to understand the mistake he made in book one.
Hmm.
So I think that kind of that initial want of freedom and kind of a resounding bell of like, you wanted this at the end of book one and you made the wrong choice, and then hitting that midpoint of like, maybe he gets free, but it's maybe not around Kai or not around them. And that's like a, hold on a minute, I did want this, but what I really needed was that friendship that I wanted way at the beginning of book one, that affection that I really wanted way at the beginning. And so it was almost like this freedom is so intertwined with affection that what he really needs is the friendship part. And
Hmm.
he didn't understand that, as much as he had that true need for freedom, it was so intertwined with affection that that's really what should have drove him in the first place.
Yeah, I think that works really well for him, definitely. Um, yeah, just reading your notes, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think, yeah, he would start questioning loyalty, and then reconnecting and start distancing himself, delving into whatever this mystery is with Kai and Sasuke. And this could even be um a a command, a mission, you know. Is it the fact that he's part of these operatives, and this would be totally dependent on your world, but like, is it he's part of these operatives, his higher ups know that he's friends with these people, his higher ups know that he's loyal, quote unquote, and it's like, okay, fine, go with them because we need to know this information of what the hell they're doing, because they keep showing up in places that we are, or showing up in places they shouldn't be showing up, and we need intel. And then so he's kind of alongside them, he's working with them, and he's like, these are my friends, but I still have to report back because I need to be a good soldier. So it's this interplay of like, what is he supposed to be doing here? You know what I mean? Like, why is he outing his friends? And that, I don't know if that would work with your story or not, but I think that could work.
Yeah, it could do. So I kind of so I'd imagined like that. So Saskia breaks Kai out of prison to help, so that she can help her find out what's really going on at the end of book
Hmm.
one. And
Hmm.
I kind of imagined that they'd sort of be on the run, sort of thing,
Yeah.
um, for the whole of book two. But it could actually be different to that. It could be that like um, Yui recognized that they could like actually help solve this and
Yeah.
kind of let them let them do the
Well, I
thing.
mean,
And yeah, that lets as long as Nico goes with them.
is it possible that the Yui knows that Kai, or that Kai's mother is alive, is somewhere, but they don't know where, and they would know that if Kai gets information, that she could lead them right to her.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, yeah. uh, yeah, I mean they vanished, so I think like they definitely want to know what happened, especially if like now they can't really control the portals anymore.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, by the end of book one, portals were being opened again, and so they've kind of
Yeah.
lost a bit of control there. So yeah,
Yeah.
that would definitely make a lot of sense.
And I mean, it ties in with your like, you have a lot of these conspiracies and a lot of these like truths behind truths and stuff. So I think that could really work, especially because you have like all of these layers. You have the Yui wants to find Kai's mother. Kai wants to find Kai. Kai wants to find her mother. You have Nico who is conflicted because of course he wants to help Kai and Saskia, but he wants to be a good soldier and he is on this mission and needs to report back, but maybe he doesn't know exactly why he's reporting back. Maybe it's because they just want to know what they're doing, but he starts to put the pieces together and he's like, oh no, I've just been giving away this whole thing this whole time. So it's like layers on layers of like who is telling the truth and who's aligned with who. I think you could really play
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, no, that's like, yeah, that really helps, especially with figuring out what Nico's going to do. I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
imagining like a scene pretty early on where, so the end of the first book, he kind of he did he helped, he was kind of instrumental in bringing things to a conclusion. So, he ends the first book with back on Earth and has like been given an award for like for doing this
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. However, they are also aware that like how could they not become aware of these like involvement with Kai? So
Yeah.
maybe there's like a scene where um he's sort of told like, okay, this is how it is. We know what you did. This is how you can make it better.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you, you I just thought of like another layer you could add in, and this is totally up to you. And this may or not may not be tropey, but I honestly it's however you want to play with this, because I probably would do this. But it could be too, like you could have this one single layer where they basically tell Kai or Nico, go, this is your mission. Or it could be you're kicked out and he has an object that is a tracker on him. And so he's lied to as to like, we know that you work with these people and like, we can't let you do this. Like, we can't let you be a part of us because you would, what if you're giving intel? Something like that. But realistically, they just like want him to be their tracker. Um, I I think you could play with that. Um,
yeah,
or even in the midpoint you could have it so that that was his mission and then he didn't want to do it anymore, so they kicked him out, gave him his freedom, um but he still had something on him that could be tracked, and that's the thing that like continues to thwart them through like the second half of part two, until he realizes like, oh, they've been tracking me this whole time, oh shit, and then has to like throw it out the window or whatever.
yeah, yeah. As you were saying it, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, good,
Exactly
cool.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I think his story could be really interesting here. So yeah, I definitely play with that one. Um I do you want to jump over to Emery now, or do you have any
Yeah.
more thoughts on Nico?
No,
Um
that's fine. That's great. Thank you.
with Emery's need for affection, the validation and acceptance within the UE leads him to fulfill freedom from constraints of the virtual world and the UE manipulation by developing identity, understanding who he truly is outside of the influence. Again, I think that this is the piece you could decide, is it identity or is it participation? Um, because again, I think it's understanding who he truly is, or it's like commanding a community kind of thing. Like I think it's what do you want him to be? Is he going to be this like evil leader, or is he just going to be this like evil person? Evil, quote unquote.
Um, I'm very torn. Guess I, I guess I kind of like I really hadn't separated like both of them apply. I really should
Yeah.
pick which way.
I
So
think,
I think participation makes sense with the
yeah,
overall theme, but
yeah,
then maybe like that could be because he's like having a negative arc, both the first and second book. Maybe it's in the third book that he realizes like, oh, what he really needed all along
yeah,
was
yeah.
participation.
I think
Uh,
you could even do like a back and forth between identity and participation. So, I mean, like maybe when you go through the edits for book one, depending on which version you push on heavier here, then do the opposite in book two. And start to push on those boundaries of like who he is or who he wants to be versus like how he commands a community. Like negative aspects of participation is manipulating people. It's controlling people and forcing them to believe in something that they may not originally want to believe. I mean, it's a cult leader, more or less.
yeah,
That that's
I think
basically
that's
what it
kind of
is.
I think that I'd say actually that does make a lot of sense for what I was imagining. Not like he through his connections with the government. So he with the information he's found out in book one, sort of Yui's dirty secret about the aliens,
Mhm.
he uses that to like get himself more power. So yeah, I guess he is kind of manipulating. Um, yeah, yeah. I think I'm leaning more towards participation.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too.
makes sense.
I think I think leaning this is one of those things like I think leaning into certain needs, like in this case, if your overall resounding theme is participation, then maybe leaning into that a little bit more without and I don't think at any point we're based off of the conversation we've leaned in too heavily or like heavy-handedly, like this is very natural for these characters. Uh what it why I would do this or what it does is it creates this like space for readers to feel that need getting fulfilled as they're reading this piece. If that makes sense. I mean, that's why like when people read romances, they're getting their own affection need fulfilled by living vicariously through these characters. And so in this case, you're getting this like communal aspect of how our good characters or our protagonists are driving through the story and we're feeling like how that community functions together, ultimately leading to this like joining of two entirely different like species and working together, and like that's such a like wholehearted thing. And then I think in the negative aspect it's like cultish, it's this like ugh, kind of feeling with participation, which I think is all aspects of like how one could fulfill that need. So I think I think that's a good direction, at
Yeah,
least to think about.
yeah, I think so. And I guess it with Emery, what I was struggling to figure out is that when he, because I did imagine him like he's manipulated his way up
Yeah.
into this powerful place. What is he gonna do with this power? That's what I was kind of struggling to
You
figure out.
you had mentioned that there's this third alien race that is this negative-esque aspect, right?
Hmm.
Would Emery ultimately work with them?
Um, so I guess so. Yeah, I guess what I wanted with the third aliens, the original bottle makers. Um, I need to come up with some names. um,
OG
uh,
portal makers.
OG portal makers. Perfect. Um, so what I imagined was like I kind of want it to seem like they could be this really malicious like way too
Mm-hmm.
powerful force, but actually they're peaceful.
Okay.
And maybe this is like the big threat or question for like book 3. So that would lead nicely to the to the yeah, the connection, the like participation
Yeah.
theme being realized by the end of it. Which also I guess would potentially help Emery in
Yeah.
his
Um, I mean, unless he's just going to be a bad character, which is also, you know, um, because I'm thinking like, what is Emery's ultimate goal? To me, it seems like it's an escape.
So right at the start, what he really, I think, I guess is what I feel like he was quite kind of accurate in like his need and his want were aligned.
Mm-hmm.
That he wanted like family, yeah, family and community. And I kind of by the end of book 3, I want him to go back to that. But because he's done so much, he's been through so much, it's going to be like a different I think he's gonna like end up deciding to like live in this virtual world, like a I guess a fresh start. um yeah, what am I doing with him in book 2?
Here's my question for you. Is he going to be redeemed?
That is a good question.
Because my thought is a one of two. I think that especially when it comes to like virtual, at least in our current understanding, that can also include control. And so it's, does he want this family in the way that he wants them to be? And so therefore he's crafting these like very controlled beings to function as his family. And then by the end of it, is he discovering that like that's not good? Like that I can't have a family that actually cares for me if I'm controlling every aspect of their being. Or is he going to not be redeemed and he is going to end up in his own virtual bubble where he can play God as much as he wants, but he is locked away from everyone else?
um so so now as you were talking, it was making me think maybe in the second book, um maybe he does have a redeeming moment towards the end, and it's that that leads to that like to the like the launch for this third book
Mm-hmm.
for him. In the third book, what I wanted to get him back to kind of finding that family finally. Sorry, I was really distracted by the alliteration. Anyway, uh, so when he finds his family, um, so I wanted him having to kind of make this emergency escape at the end of book 2 and
Mm-hmm.
landing on this planet that is kind of
Yep.
disconnected. So he's not in this virtual world. So maybe actually he in the second book, maybe he does start to realize that, oh, this isn't getting him what he
Yeah.
wanted after
Yeah.
all. Yes, maybe actually it's not a negative arc for him again.
I mean, maybe in the second book he gets what he wanted in the wrong way. He gets that family, but he's so controlling of them and he starts to lose the joy in it or something like that, and then gets yeeted onto a desert planet where he has no one anymore. So then he loses all participation, and the opposite of participation is isolation, and all of these pieces. So then he has that redemption arc in book 3 where he's starting at base 0, isolated, and he's no longer in a virtual world. And maybe he comes across people, I'm just thinking like he comes across people and he's almost trying to be controlling of them. And they're like, dude, you can't control us here, like whatever they want to do. And so he's basically like, he has to gain these tools that make him realize that like, I have to interact with people. I can't just control them, and like all these sorts of things in book 3. But I think in book 2, you could really play up like he gets what he wants, and it is definitely not what he needed. And he starts to realize the cracks in his original plan.
Yeah, definitely. So would that mean that so he could start realizing this? Could this be like a midpoint sort of thing, or could this,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be a like finale?
I think because one, his overall arc, I think him getting thrown onto a desert planet at the end of book 2 makes sense. I mean, like he's a main character, but I really think that at the moment it's Nico, Kai, and Saskia that are like, this is their story, book 2. His redemption arc is probably going to be a pretty strong book 3. So I feel like you could push his quote unquote midpoint to later on.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
if that makes sense. Like I feel like you could. I don't feel like there's as a reader, I wouldn't be too upset about that. It's almost like leaving him at a cliffhanger. Um, for me to read more, for me to be like, uh-oh, he got what he wanted. He was just thrown and now he's alone. Um,
Yeah.
maybe he meets one person by the end of it, and we just that way we know he's not dead.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that definitely works. I think also, I think like book 1, I guess so Kai kind of started out as this like the main character for me, but I feel
Yeah.
like Emery's story just became so interesting in book 1 that maybe
Yeah.
it's okay if book 2, if he's kind of takes a little bit of a back seat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that works. Um,
Yeah.
okay. We're almost up on the hour. Is there anything in regard to the outline that you don't feel like we've touched on?
No, that gives me loads of yeah, that's made things a lot clearer. I'm gonna go over all this stuff after and then like stick it in some order. But yeah, no, that's been so helpful. Thank you. Um,
Awesome.
I did have one random question
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not outline related. Um, so so yes, this is a sci-fi, and obviously I've
Hmm.
invented kind of this future world, and I have some,
Yeah.
invented terminology, but I don't really go into like actual, like sciencey terminology like at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Should I do that?
You don't
Is
have
this
to.
something I should do?
You don't have to at all.
Yeah.
There's sci-fi in and of itself is such a broad uh it's so broad. You could have military sci-fi where you have to be so specific about weaponry, and that's like the primary focus of it. You could have like opera, sci-fi opera, what space opera? I forgot the words, where it's so big on like political aspects, and like the mention of science is such a minutia piece to that, where it's more about like shifting chess pieces throughout the entire piece. Um, lightning. I don't know if you heard that, but thunder just went off.
Exciting.
It was very, very dramatic at the moment. But like to me,
Space opera, lightning strikes.
space opera. Um, to me, this is based off of the descriptions that I've read, this is one of those like, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but like the approachable sci-fi where anyone could come into this without feeling overwhelmed by the sci-fi aspects, because it's the story that matters the most. Um And that's not to say that other sci-fi, the story doesn't matter, but when it starts to get really heavy on the sci-fi stuff, sometimes non-sci-fi readers kind of push away from that because they're like, that's too much science for me. I feel like you could make up words here and there. Maybe you should have names for your aliens, but other than that, um, I think that this is fine. I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to have super scientific names for anything.
Okay, cool.
Because this is again, because this is through the eyes of Kai, this is through the eyes of Nico and Emery. What's important to them and what
Yeah.
they see the world of and what terminology they use is way more important than telling me that this is the I was gonna make up a word, but I'm not going to because I'm sure I'll be made fun of later. So whatever device. Yeah.
Okay,
I think what
cool.
you could do, I know, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna keep rambling. I think
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you could do is when you have uh any sort of like scientists like her mother or whenever they're in a tech oriented place, that's when you could play with some terminology. But I think their perspective, it means that for the most part, they're not going to.
Cool. Good, because I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, don't then. There's no need to. You're fine. Um,
So good
okay.
news.
Yeah. We'll stop the recording there and then we can chat for just a little bit longer if you would like.
Thank you very much.
Maybe. Hopefully. This is gonna be like 3 hours later until I find this button. Goodbye, everybody.